This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is all about the two of us each nominating what we think is the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, and our favourite story. It is, of course, a competition. We each pick our favourites, and then a judge has to choose a winner. And that judge every week is our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Good morning, Adam.
Oh, good morning, Michael.
Shall we jump straight into it today? Because there's some huge stories around in the last week. It has been a massive week for business news. So no surprises for guessing what Sean's going to pick. What was the biggest story, Sean?
Well, what's going on in financial markets? Now, it all started a week ago when Silicon Valley Bank failed in the US. It's the 16th largest bank in the US, and it pretty much caused a run on bank stocks, not necessarily banks themselves. The 14th largest bank in the US, First Republic, in a couple of hours lost about 80% of its value on the stock market. Incredible. The contagion spread very, very quickly. Then it was Credit Suisse's turn. Now, Credit Suisse isn't quite the global bank it used to be. At one point, it was one of Europe's great banks. It's had a rough time. It's had some pretty bad exposures, some pretty bad losses over the past decade or so. But basically, late last year, the Saudi National Bank took a 10% stake in it. This week, the chair of the Saudi National Bank said it wasn't going to provide Credit Suisse any more financial assistance. That triggered a 30% fall in that bank's share price, and the rest of the banking sector followed suit. Now, bank shares have tumbled, but it's well beyond that. Oil prices have dropped. Equity markets have fallen. There's real fears of a financial contagion because so many other banks bank with Credit Suisse and, to a lesser extent, Silicon Valley Bank. The big one here for many of us, this may put an end to the interest rate cycle. The last thing that a central bank wants to be doing is pushing up interest rates, putting more banks into trouble, hence causing more financial contagion. So, massive, massive story globally affecting all the banks, all the ASX stocks. I think it's overblown. Now, I don't want to downplay this, Adam. Massive story. The banking system in Australia, and globally mostly, is highly liquid, incredibly safe. It's not like it was back in 2007, 2008. I think we'll get through this okay, but I wouldn't bet my house on it. Michael.
Oh, okay. So I reckon that this could be the first week that we have a tie for the biggest story. Now, Adam, I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. I would never do that because you are a very good independent judge and you cannot be swayed. But I don't know necessarily whether I can beat that story, even with Sean's admission that it is in fact overblown and therefore not the biggest story. So I'm setting my sights lower. I'm lowering my expectations. I'm just aiming for a tie on this one, please. So I think this is equally the biggest story of the week. And it is the biggest equal story because of the scale. Australia is going to spend just a casual $368 billion on 8 submarines over the next 3 decades. And just think about the size of that number, $368 billion. It is huge. It's our biggest procurement deal ever. It's big business, obviously. Great for jobs. 20,000 roles involved in kind of building and maintaining the subs, and there'll be new bases and upgrades all over the place. So there are obvious kind of flow-on benefits to it. But politically, this is a very, very, very big story because taxpayers will be paying for this for years. And China is up in arms about it, calling it a blatant act that hurts peace and stability in the region, which does seem just a little bit hypocritical considering, as Peter Dutton pointed out this week, their recent arms build-up. And the fact that these are nuclear-powered subs is significant. It's a British design incorporating Australian, US and UK technology which one would hope is still cutting edge in 3 decades' time. We will see. Hopefully it evolves. Possibly the best part of this story, though, was Paul Keating getting stuck in. And it's fantastic because we all love a little bit of theatre and there is nobody better at it than Paul Keating. And he said it was the worst decision by a Labor government since conscription in World War I. So he's had to go back a fair way to find a worse decision. Clearly, reading kind of between the lines, I would say he's not a fan of the deal. Anthony Albanese hit back I suppose hit back is kind of really not describing it fairly. He said he fundamentally disagrees with Paul Keating.
Yes, an elbow hit back at Labor.
Yes, indeed. I think he needs to take the gloves off. You know what? He could take
does.
a lesson or two from Peter Dutton, potentially. He was a little bit more engaging. He described Paul Keating as being being like the crazy old uncle yelling at family members, which I think is a great image, isn't it? Because you obviously have the kind of the elder statesman of the Labor Party now just criticising a Labor government decision and just making all kinds of waves. It's a massive story because of the economic impact. It is a massive story because of the geopolitical impact. And it is a massive story just because I like submarines. Adam.
You like submarines, and you conceded that you couldn't win the category, but maybe strive for a dead heat.
Maybe I was quite clearly said I basically, it was almost predetermined that it would be a tie, and I was just giving you the reasons then as to why it should be. So please,
predetermined by you.
Yes.
Yes,
Wonderful. Okay, both massive stories, both about tipping points, and I think the global concerns around risk, interest rates, inflation, Ukraine war, etc. Everyone's looking for significant pieces of data. And this week, the tipping point was caused by Silicon Valley Bank going down. And that contagion, as you said, Sean, spread to banks around the world, and oil prices and equities all flowed. It was incredible this week. And Sean, that's why you have to win, because the impact was truly international. On yours, Michael, staggering numbers, decades worth of investment in submarines and jobs and technology. 8 subs, 368 billion, of which 5 of those subs are second-hand subs. So that's pretty incredible too.
Yeah, but they're good condition.
Yeah, they're not clunkers, as Joe Biden told us.
They're not clunkers. That's right. Bless him. And bringing Keating off the bench, always a spectacle. So, Sean, you win this week, and Michael, you just didn't quite get there on the dead heat.
I will just point out that in 3 decades' time, we will still be talking about these submarines. And I don't think in 3 decades' time, we'll be talking about Silicon Valley Bank.
No. We will have moved on. We'll be buying them from the Chinese in about 5 years, I reckon. We will have moved on.
Because this deal is not actually a 3-decade deal, really, is it? So... All right, no, look, that is reasonable. I was expecting that result. I was aiming, hopeful for a tie, but no, that's reasonable. Let's move on to most remarkable, shall we?
Yes, Michael, what's your most remarkable story for the week?
Okay, well, I picked this as the most remarkable because we knew it was going to be bad, but I personally didn't think it was going to be quite this bad in terms of power prices. And considering that the federal government's intervention late last year, I was hoping for more, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I am perhaps just a little bit naive, which is possible. Households and businesses can expect power price rises of between 25 and 30% from July 1. We found that out this week. That is huge. That is a huge jump. And a lot of factors obviously have gone into it, including global energy prices, the high cost of coal and gas because of the war in Ukraine, even things like outages in older coal plants as well. And the government says that if they hadn't intervened last year on wholesale prices, the increase would have been even bigger. And then on that, we had the regulator warning that Canberra stepping in to impose the gas price caps and regulate prices has actually caused several projects to stall, creating obviously that thing that business hates most, uncertainty. But Sean, for me, the most remarkable part of this story was not just the hike of between 25 and 30% in power prices, and that's affecting both households and businesses, so very topical for a business podcast. But the stat that you quoted this week, that in order to reach net zero emissions by 2050 and end the use of coal-fired power, we will need the equivalent of 50 snowy hydro schemes to be built, which I just think is staggering and a little bit disheartening, really, because I'm like, where are you going to put all of them?
That's where you can spend your $368 billion. Forget the subs.
Absolutely. Yeah. We should be using the money for 50 snowy hydro schemes. I don't know where you're going to put them, but it is a good idea. Over to you.
That much money, you can build the mountain first, perhaps. I mean, I don't know if that's remarkable. It's dull, Michael. Dull story. Remarkable? Definitely dull. Tell you what I think's remarkable. Cyclone Freddy. Come on, who's going to argue with me on that? No one? That's it. No, I better tell you about it. Cyclone studied a storm lashing Mozambique. It made landfall a second time this week, and there were deaths as a result. It's basically now the most relentless tropical cyclone ever observed. On March 7, it became the longest-lived tropical cyclone ever recorded. Now it is the most energetic storm ever to circumvent the Earth. Well, at least in the time that we've been able to record them. The storm first developed off the north of Western Australia on February 6. It's gone about 9,000 kilometres. It's still off the coast of southeastern Africa. It struck Madagascar on February 19, Mozambique for the first time on February 24. It's blamed for about 30 deaths at this point. Now, Freddie attained Category 5 strength twice over the southern Indian Ocean in mid-February. It's been named for what's coming on to close to 40 days. I mean, the previous record holder was Hurricane John, and don't we all remember Hurricane John? That was the Pacific storm in 1994. That was named for 31 days. This one's at 40 days. Remarkable. And the damage it's caused, and the economic angst as a result, Adam, enormous.
Oh, that was uncomfortable, the attempt at the end to just attach it to some kind of economic significance. Adam, please intervene here, and I think that you need to consider the use of demerit points for Sean's blatant criticism of me at the beginning of his story. So please, do your thing.
I think Sean's been blown up by his own words twice on this one. Look, a lovely attempt at the end to shoehorn economics and business impact into Cyclone Freddie. And it is a remarkable story, really is. But also your words from this week, the power prices, and as part of that story on what we're going to have to do to get to net zero, it's staggering. So the way you put it, Sean, we'll need the equivalent of 50 snowy hydro schemes in the next 25 years. That is amazing. 7 times our historic investment. I knew we had to really transition and there was a lot of work to do. I didn't quite appreciate that scale. And that is incredible. So it's like the 30% price increase. Yeah, I knew that, really. But that net zero will require that much infrastructure and investment is like, okay, deep breath. We've really got something remarkable here. So, Sean, I'm sorry, but Michael wins this story.
I'm running a protest on this one. What is it about this week then, if the 30%, we already knew about that. What is it about this week that makes it a remarkable story this week?
Decision's been locked in, I'm afraid, Sean.
Sean, if I can quote your own words, 7 times the historic investment in the next 25 years. Those were your words from this week. And that we would need 50 snowy hydroelectric schemes.
I mean, that's been around for weeks and weeks, possibly months. Anyway, let's move on.
Well, Sean took defeat well there, I thought.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's something that Sean and I have in common. We are both spectacularly good sports.
You know, I have this great friend. If I name his name, he's going to know exactly who it is. So I'm not going to say Roscoe's name. But Roscoe, I apologise for this, but you taught me something. The one thing worse than a bad loser is a bad winner, Michael, a bad winner.
Sean, I would like to point out that at the moment I'm not winning. It's 1-1. It is in fact a draw at the moment. So we're heading into halftime perfectly even. So there's no bad sports. There's no bad winners. We're just both bad tires?
Competitors.
There we go. All right, we'll come back in a moment. All right, Sean, we're looking for the sleeper story of the week now. So this is one that's flying under the radar perhaps, or is going to become a bigger story further down the track. Would you like to go first?
Yes, now this is a bit odd actually, but it does affect millions of people.
Oh, it's got sleeper written all over it. Go on.
The share prices of the big banks. Now, they've tumbled. There's about $60 billion wiped off the value of bank stocks over the past 6 weeks. There's a big chunk of that this week, the contagion effect from Silicon Valley Bank and Credit Suisse, but there's more than that. When Commonwealth Bank earnings came out in the middle of February, they basically announced that net interest margins, the difference between what a bank receives on a loan and pays out on deposits, has peaked. Since its high then, middle of February, Commonwealth Bank's share price is off 15%. ANZ, NAB, Westpac, they're all down somewhere around that 8 to 12% range. Regional banks have tumbled too. Now, financials are 25% of the market. The big banks are a big chunk of that 25%. People's portfolios, superannuation, has gone backwards rapidly over the past 4 to 6 weeks on the back of the banks. There's more to it than net interest margins. There's also this issue of political pressure coming down on the banks to pass on higher deposit rates following the Reserve Bank's decisions to lift official rates. Banks have been able to push out their margins by not passing on those higher deposit rates, but the ACCC is now looking into that. The government, and Labor is more likely to be critical of the banks on this, are taking a more active role in it. That's really significant for bank profits. So something's got to give here. Now, this could be a great buying opportunity. We're not an advice podcast, right? I have no idea that it's a good buying opportunity, but banks are actually relatively cheap right now. Or it could be an incredibly rough road ahead for the banks as margins get squeezed, political pressure comes on them, and the people who own the banks, of course, are the shareholders, and that's most of us in our super fund. So we're not talking a lot about it, but given the banks are being squeezed, biggest sector of the market, a great sleeper story for mine this week. Michael.
That is a good sleeper story. No criticism from me, Sean. My sleeper story, I thought I'd try a new approach and just let the facts kind of stand for themselves and let the fact that you're talking about the biggest banks in Australia being a sleeper story and just let Adam kind of read between the lines on that one. And so I'm not going to say anything. My sleeper story.
Oh, he's hopeless, isn't he?
My sleeper story is something very different, Sean. And my sleeper story is about TikTok and whether, in fact, TikTok's days in Australia could be numbered. There was big news out of the US this week with the Wall Street Journal reporting that the Biden administration has demanded the Chinese owner of the video app sell up. Now, if they don't, they may actually then face a full US ban. If this all sounds familiar, it's because we have actually been here before. Donald Trump tried the same thing back in 2020, but he was blocked by the courts. The Committee on Foreign Investment in the US warned back then about the risk of Chinese-owned ByteDance passing US user information to the Chinese government. A ban will be very tricky. It would be very unpopular. There's 100 million users in the US alone. It is a bit of a sleeper because TikTok has already been banned on government devices in countries, including the US and Canada and in the European Union. Now the US is talking about a total ban. And so the question really is how long until we see similar action in Australia? My favourite part of the story, though, is just how apathetic some users are. The BBC went and spoke to a number of US uni students after the uni blocked TikTok on the Wi-Fi because of those same security concerns. The student interviewed for the piece said, "I was annoyed because I live here and I get bored." And then she went on to say, "I can understand banning it at government places because those are more sensitive, but I'm not important enough as a college student with 8 cents to my name." So she went out, got a VPN, and got back online on TikTok. So completely disregarding all of the security concerns because she finds her life quite boring. I thought it was very well played. I thought it was a good sleeper story. Adam.
Okay, I love the fact that the US college student found a workaround within minutes, probably, for any possible restriction. But in terms of economic impact, topicality, timeliness, and subjective bias, Sean wins this one. The bank stock's down because of their pronounced value on the ASX and their value to our country. I don't know. I don't know whether it's a buying opportunity or not, but I think the political pressure is something new post-COVID. You know, banks were seen as helping us get through, interest rates were low. How quickly that's all changed and how the sentiment has come back into the contest. So I think this really is interesting for its impact on the value of the ASX and superannuation. So Sean wins this one.
How would you describe that as a sleeper, though? Would you say it's a sleeper story, or would you say maybe it's more appropriate in remarkable?
I'm not. Thank you for the question, Michael. I'm not seeing it as being broadly reported. Now, I know that Sean's been proactive in his analysis of this, but I don't see it outside that much, these questions being asked. So I think there is a sleeper element to it.
Yeah, get that into you, Michael. Get that into you. Yeah.
Goodness me.
Once again, a great winner.
Now, I've got to ask though, which was worse in its respective category, the dodgy Cyclone Freddy or the dodgy TikTok story? Who's going to get lower points on them?
No, TikTok was a perfect sleeper story because it's happening all around the world, and then it will happen here. Now, this is the biggest.
Didn't we report on this 3 weeks ago?
No, we reported on the fact that it had been banned on government phones in the US and in Canada.
Yeah, the college element is new.
Oh, yeah. Oh, what a surprise you didn't win on the college element.
I didn't talk about it on the weekend edition then.
Both role model competitors. Good winner, good loser.
Children?
Oh,
Children?
Goodness me. Oh, this show.
Maybe I should get out a yellow card system when the bickering becomes too much.
I think Sean needs one just to pull him into line every now and then. All right. What is the favourite story of the week? Who goes first on this one?
You go first. It's your turn.
Okay. Well, look, I don't know. I'm a bit disgruntled now.
Really? I didn't pick that up.
So I hit it well. I kind of keep my emotions in check.
Like a chameleon.
Yes. Blending seamlessly into my surroundings. Now, this is going to sound like I'm actually just targeting you, just Adam, that this is one that I've picked out and I'm trying to play you specifically. Okay. I'm not. I am genuinely passionate about tax reform.
At least you shouldn't laugh, Michael.
He couldn't even get the sentence out.
I nearly got through
Even with your best method acting, you couldn't even get the sentence out.
No, I genuinely am passionate about tax reform. And this week was an exciting week for that topic. Obviously, it's a very low bar for what needs to cross the threshold of exciting for tax reform. But this week, past that level, former Treasury boss Ken Henry declared that Australia needs political leadership that does more than tinker at the edges of tax reform. And I think that is actually well said. He said, among other things, that the Howard government's shift towards kind of the broad-based indirect taxes like the GST has been completely undone in the last 2 decades because of an erosion of the GST base and income tax bracket creep. He said, I love this, the federal state tax.
I love the way that you said income tax bracket creep. I don't know that you realise that was all one phrase.
Yes, I got halfway through and I'm like, I've put a pause here when I'm not supposed to.
Who are you calling a creep?
When you make a mistake, usually you just kind of roll straight through it and you rely on your friends not to point it out. But anyway, that's fine. If you're trying to send me a subtle message, Sean, I appreciate it. Look, and so he said that the tax system really fails every test, including economic growth and fairness to younger people. What this reminds me just a little bit of is of New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet and the changes to stamp duty, kind of giving home buyers the option of stamp duty or paying a land tax instead. And I think that's good because it changes it up a bit. It gets rid of kind of more inefficient taxes and starts making smarter, bigger decisions. But the reason that I really genuinely do love this story, all jokes aside, is not because of the tax reform, because I don't think I can say that with a straight face. But I like it. I like it because there is actually a bit of critical thinking happening, because it's the only way things will ever actually change. If people are willing to have a point of view that is radically different to what everyone else already believes, and it is a conversation that does need to take place. And I can't be any more genuine than that. And Adam, I hope that you will agree. I'm sorry. I'm doing my best here.
Did the tax reform debate actually start this week?
A speech this week. Okay, Sean, you cannot put all these weird criteria now on questions that the stories have to have begun this week. You could argue that anything in politics can't be discussed because the Federation of States didn't start this week. So we didn't have a federal government from this week. So it feels like we need some clarity over the rules here. And you know what, Adam, I want you to intervene.
Yeah, may I make a suggestion?
Please.
Michael, when Sean baits you, don't bite.
Children.
I can't help it. I have a fiery personality. Please, Sean, what is your favourite story this week?
Well, my favourite story is the fact that there's a bunch of bidders out there for the Sun Cable project. Now,
is that a new cable? Is that just started this week? New project.
The fact that there are new bidders out there, yes, that part.
Just lodged the development application this week on Tuesday, I think it was.
There will be a yellow card for heckling, Michael.
Sorry, please go on. I thought my microphone was off. Please go on.
Just the fact that the project's going ahead. Now, remember, this is the big one. This is the electricity infrastructure project planning to include the world's largest solar plant in the Northern Territory, the world's largest battery, and the world's longest submarine power cable linking the Northern Territory to Singapore. There was a consortium running it. It included Mike Cannon-Brookes of Atlassian fame, Andrew Forrest of Fortescue Metals fame. It kind of went broke didn't go broke, but it broke up in early January, and so it went out to tender. Now, the suggestion was that either Cannon-Brookes would get a group together or Forrest would get a group together. Well, apparently there are other bidders for the project, so it's likely to go ahead. This is about $36 billion to build this 42,000-kilometre undersea high-voltage power line. I think that's fantastic that they're going to do this. This is actually transferring renewable energies from Australia to Asia and could well set the standard for how we export renewables in the future. Massive story. Someone's going to support it. Favourite story of this week? Adam.
God, this is so hard, this one. They're both excellent stories, and I'm going to give it a draw. I can't separate it. Because the personal bias is tearing at me for tax reform. And it's a great story, Michael. But this Sun Cable is just such a great example of the transition we need to make to renewable energy and the export opportunity for Australia. So I've got to give it a dead heat on this one.
And I'm genuinely interested in transmission cables between Darwin and the Northern Territory and Singapore. Genuinely interested.
When you say it, Sean, it just sounds so false. When I say it, it actually sounds like it's coming from a place of deep passion. So there we go, 2.5 to 1.5. What are the points?
Okay, this is spectacular. 1 point difference. That has happened before, mind you, but the height of the scores, my God. Michael, 94 points.
Oh.
Sean, 95 points.
Oh, Freddie. Cyclone Freddie did me in. I was going for a perfect score.
Yeah, I've got to say, that would have been probably our ugliest competition yet. It feels like there's no respect anymore for anyone, for each other, for the judge.
Well, yeah, there never was for the judge.
Yeah.
But look, you know what? In the end, the news is the winner. Even if that news didn't start this week, Sean, like the Sun Cable project. But
or tax reform.
Oh. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you both. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sean.
Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.